we're still on the fence.
So the Jewish immigrant who came from Europe and the United States, and he goes to the dentist and he says that he would like to order 5 sets of teeth. 5 sets. He doesn't have any teeth. 5 sets. So the dentist is asking, why 5? He says, listen, one of them I need flesh. One of them is for meat dishes. One of them is milchik. Okay, so 2, I understand 2. So yeah. And then 1 fleshik for Pesach. And then 1 milchik for Pesach. Okay, makes sense now. 4, I understand. Meat for the ear, meat for Pesach, dairy for the ear, dairy for Pesach. Why the 5th one? Every once in a while, I want to have a treif sandwich. So, anyway, so today we're going to talk about kosher. And we were talking about fascinating facts, and we said one of the things about fascinating facts is that it's some misconception that we have about different things relating to observant of Judaism or understanding of the Torah, that we are just fascinated to see that it's so different than what we expected it to be. So today we're going to talk about kosher in general, and we're going to point out some details which people have wrong understanding, misconception, and also some very interesting and surprising ideas. So first of all, they have a chart here on page 112. It was done in the UK. How many years an average a person spends doing different activities. And the truth is, I wasn't surprised by anything in particular, besides one thing. But I wasn't surprised really by things here. But what you see is if you add up anything that is related to food, you realize that we spend a very big chunk of our life doing things that are related to food. Cooking, eating, doing exercise, doing different things that are related to eating, and we do it a lot every single day. And this is something that we have to start really thinking of. Because when you realize that you do something for that amount of time, you want to know what is it about, how can I make it meaningful, how can I make it something special. And yeah, God created us such a way that we are dependent on food. How can we make it a meaningful and a spiritual experience? Yeah, so if you look in cooking, and it says over here, according to this, in UK, so the man spends a half of the time cooking, and the woman, everything made sense. Then it came over here, restroom time, men 3 years, women 6 months. And this I didn't understand. Okay, that's, I don't know what it is. Okay, in any case, okay, good. Okay, fine. Okay, so we're going to start with the words of the Zohar. We had some Zohar, some Kabbalah before also. And today we're going to start with some words that are hard to understand. Let's see text number 1. Please.
One who desires bread should eat it with the blade of a sword.
So the Zohar, as we know, we don't take literally. And this is why it says that a person should not study Zohar until he came to a certain age. A person comes to a certain age and a certain understanding of Torah, because someone can take this word and so we have to understand what is the Zohar saying here. So first of all, the word lechem, which refers to bread, but it also refers to any kind of sustaining food. And the word milchama, which means a war, is the same root, lechem. There is a connection between a war and food. What kind of a war is going on that the Zohar is talking about? So the idea is very simple. We have an animal aspect to us, an animalistic aspect to us. And a person could become an animal. A human being can become an animal and eat like an animal. In every way and understanding of what an animal eats. The idea is, the Zohar says there has to be a fight. He's talking about a spiritual fight that a person needs to have in order to eat with the right intention. Because it's very easy. Now, if you come with this and many other activities a person may do in life, which he may naturally look for a meaning and look for something. This seems to be simple as it looks. Just grab the food, take whatever you like, just take it. That's it. What's there? And you can become, your eating can become like an animal eating. Now, Judaism believes, Yiddishkeit, there is no such a thing that a human being does anything like an animal. The reason why we have a soul is not that we can every once in a while connect to something spiritual, but it means that everything we do need to be connected to us. And some activities naturally could become very animalistic. And on those you have to be extra careful that you have the right intention. So this is the meaning of this law. A war with yourself. So, one of these wars that we are talking about is the concept of eating kosher. Because the moment you say that you are not eating what you would like to eat, and you are eating because this was meant for you to eat, was given to you, there's a reason, all of a sudden it's a very different kind of eating. You know, maybe in the olden times, it was also, and maybe in some places it's still, a real war because it's not available. There's no food. You know, in times, I heard once from a Holocaust survivor who lives in Victoria, and may Hashem send him a quick recovery. He told me he was sent to Auschwitz with his family. And he was sent with his grandfather, and not going to take you through the whole details of the story. But when they arrived at Auschwitz, they separated between the young and the old. He was actually 17 at the time, but he told them he was 18, and he was able to be in a group of people who at least didn't go right away to the gas chambers. And he saw his grandfather standing and crying on the other side, and he walked over to him, and he asked him with this, "Why are you crying?" And he tried to. So his grandfather told him, "For all my life, I never ate anything that wasn't kosher. But while we were sitting in the train on my way, we were on the train for a few days, on my way I ate something non-kosher." So why was he crying when he arrived in Auschwitz? You know, he told me this story just within many other stories. And I was thinking about this person. Why was he crying when he arrived at Auschwitz? He was crying that he wasn't able to keep his spiritual standards in that condition. They knew what Auschwitz was, and this is what he was depressed about. So anyways, in different times, to be able to eat kosher was very difficult. Today, it's not as difficult at all. No, sometimes I have people, they are telling me, "You eat only kosher?" And they open big eyes. And I think, because, very simple, they went to Sefer and they saw a kosher section. Yeah. And they think that that's my menu. Basically, borscht and gefilte fish and candles.
We don't need
More or less.
most of that.
So if this is the kosher section, that's all you eat, you have big trouble. Today, more than 50% of the product you find in the grocery store are kosher certified. Okay? So it's a very different, I'm not talking about some things that are not as available like meat and this, but if you look on the shelves, you'll see that more than 50% of the products are certified kosher. So there is not much of that difficulty. But we will see that the discipline that comes with eating kosher does something tremendous, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to start a little bit from understanding what is considered kosher food. What is kosher food? And if you ask an average person what is kosher food, so you may get the answer that's blessed by a rabbi. And many also will say that the kosher food means they were supervised by a rabbi. This is someone who knows better. The rabbi is not coming to give blessings, but he's coming to supervise. Now this is also wrong. You know the story of this man who a rabbi was driving down the big street in town, and he sees one of his congregants, a very respected member of his shul, is walking into McDonald's. It wasn't the kosher McDonald's he had in Israel. And he walks in, and the rabbi is very surprised. But he thinks, you know what? He's probably just there, maybe he wants to take a drink, maybe he has to meet someone. So he just watches. I walks in, and he goes right to this, and he orders cheeseburger sandwich. He says, I'm sure he's serving it to someone else, probably meeting someone, and then you give it to another person, and he's going to eat something else, or he's just going to watch him eating. He comes and he puts it right in front of him. He says, maybe he wants it. And then he goes and he takes a bite. So the rabbi runs into the McDonald's, comes and sits right next to him, and he says, I saw you walking in, and I was watching you, and I thought, you're definitely not going to buy anything for himself. And then you bought, and I said, and then I saw you eating it. He said, one second, you watched me from the moment I walked in until now? So it was under rabbinical supervision. What's the problem? So kosher doesn't mean they were supervised by a rabbi. Because something can be kosher without being supervised by a rabbi, and something can be supervised by a rabbi and not be kosher. Kosher is talking about the product and the food. It has nothing to do with rabbis. It has to do with food. Now, because rabbis are people who are supposed to know Jewish law, and there's people who would like to have their help in making sure that's kosher, but you don't need a rabbi to have kosher food. Kosher food is the food. So we'll talk about some basic kosher foods, and we will see, first of all, what makes it kosher, and maybe we'll understand better in some way why do we need those laws. Okay, so first of all, we'll talk about kosher animals. There's a student in McGill today, is a very serious student. When he was a teenager, I had him once we had a class of learning, and he said, Rabbi, it's one thing I want to explain me, and this is, why can't we eat shellfish? I love it. And, coming from a Jewish family, but I love it. And tell me why can't they eat shellfish? And I was thinking, what will be the answer for this young student at the time? So I told them, I have a friend who's the Chabad rabbi in Chiang Mai. This is in Thailand. And in this town, they have a zoo. Like every other zoo, all the animals. But the zoo has something that no other zoo has in the world. It has a restaurant. What is that restaurant? The restaurant is, you can order anything from the zoo. Okay? Order anything. You can just walk out of the zoo and this, like this for lunch, this for supper, for dessert. And he made exactly the face like most of you did not. And I told him, what's your problem? What's your problem? What's your problem? Why do you think you can eat a cow and a chicken? You can eat a monkey and a donkey? What's your problem? What's your problem? What do you want? Because you never saw people eating an elephant, you can eat an elephant. Well, be open-minded. If you can eat a cow and a chicken, they can eat something else. What's the problem? He became a vegetarian afterwards. No, but what happened was, a person wants to think, who gives me the right? That's a good question. You say you don't have the right to eat an elephant because you want to have it for supper. But if you have the right to eat a cow, have it for supper. Chicken, I'm saying if you're a vegetarian, but if you are, otherwise there is no difference. So yes, there is laws of which animals we should eat and those we shouldn't eat. And you should not eat an elephant. Okay, so what is the signs of a kosher animal? This is, many of us already know, and that wouldn't be news. This is text 3a.
Any animal that has a cloven hoof and which brings up its kite, you may eat.
Okay, so we know about it. It's talking about animals, which includes animals, how do you call it? Domestic animals. Yeah, in Hebrew there's chaya and behema. Those categories of animals need to have those two signs to be kosher. Now, if someone has only one of them, so the Torah, not only the Torah tells you the signs, but the Torah says, lists to you all the animals that have those signs. There is no other animals. The list. Text number 3b is the list.
There are animal species that you may eat: ox, goat, and sheep, gazelle, deer, antelope, ibex, chamois, bison, and giraffe.
Okay. So this is the animal you can eat, including a giraffe. We'll talk about a giraffe as we're going to see here in a second. So those are the animals that fit those categories and they can be eaten. The Torah afterwards lists those that have only one of them. We will get that in a second. But I want to talk about the giraffe. If you ask even a learned Jew, you ask him, why don't we eat the giraffe? The Torah says, it doesn't even hint, it says a giraffe. Why don't we eat giraffe? I went the first time last year to a safari, a zoo that you, and I seen a giraffe. I don't know if you've ever seen a giraffe from that close distance. It's a lot of meat. Like our van, I'm talking about the giraffe's stomach was higher than the top of our van. Okay? So the legs is taller in our van. This is where just the stomach starts. I'm not talking about now the neck. I'm talking about it's a huge thing. This giraffe. A huge, big thing. So why don't we eat the giraffe? So you're going to ask an advert. This is going to say because we don't know where to slaughter it. It's a nice joke, but the truth is we actually have a lot of range to slaughter it. Anywhere over there is good. That's not the reason. You can slaughter at any. It's like if a regular animal you slaughter within a very short place, but giraffe you have 2 meters of slaughtering. There's no problem. Slaughtering is not an issue. So why don't we eat the giraffe? We don't eat the giraffe simply because Jews never ate the giraffe. Yes?
Don't they have a secondary set of valves so if you were to
Here we go. So maybe you came to some class before, and we'll talk about it in a second. But you're right, and we'll get it in a second. But first of all, the reason why we did not because of that reason, because we never ate. Jewish people never ate. So if we didn't see it, we don't eat.
How do you know that?
Our fathers told us, their fathers, like we know the rest of the things. So we don't eat giraffe. So some people applied to this, said it's just not practical. It's a big animal, very hard to control. You have to go on the ladder to slaughter. It's some people say it's not practical. And what you mentioned is something that was recently found, and that may not be the reason, but just very interesting. And this will answer also something regarding slaughtering in general. In the first lesson, we had a verse from the Torah that says, "You should slaughter as I commanded you." And the Torah doesn't say any commandment. There was an oral commandment of how to slaughter an animal. And this is how this is what makes an animal kosher to be slaughtered in that very specific way. Now, some people, animal rights people, and especially lately it was in Europe, here with other things, and they came and they said this is not a humane way and it's a lot of suffering for the animal and you should stop slaughtering. And it came to a point where it was a decision of the European Union if they allow slaughtering in the entire European Union. There's some countries who are not allowing anything. But they're not allowing the entire European Union, that would be a very big problem because there's many Jews who live there. So it came to that discussion, and then one vet, a very respected doctor, wrote an article which was an amazing discovery. And this was the article. His article was basically saying that when you slaughter an animal, the moment there is no blood flow to the brain, even if the animal can jump and can run and can turn around and over, the animal doesn't feel anything because there's no blood flow to the brain. Because within less than a second, it stops and that's it. If the animal does, it doesn't feel any pain anymore because there's no blood flow to the brain. The veins are cut. And the knife of shrita has to be extremely, extremely sharp. What the rabbi does at the slaughterhouse, he just checks constantly that there is nothing on the knife, so it cuts with the touch. Okay? Touch, and it cuts. There is no, you have to do this. It's a touch. Okay? Now, some other people argue that many animals have in the back another set of veins from the heart to the brain, in the back of the neck. What's the reason for that? Why they need to have another one? Because the heart pumps the blood. Now, when you have the same distance from your brain to the heart, it pumps in a certain way. Now, if the distance changes, it could pump too much. I'm not a medical expert, but that's the idea. And for that reason, animals sometimes they change their position, and the head becomes closer to the heart. So then there's other veins who kick in. That's the way Hashem created it. Now he found an amazing discovery, and this is that all the kosher animals in the Torah don't have this back veins. They don't. Besides one. Which one?
Giraffe.
And the reason why, because the giraffe, when it drinks water, you can imagine how close the head becomes now to the heart. And a giraffe has a heart like this. Okay? The pump all the way 2 floors, it has a heart like this. Now, if this will continue pumping the same way when the giraffe puts her head down, that could be very dangerous. So giraffe has that system in the back. So he wanted to suggest that the fact that we had this tradition, we don't need it. It's kosher, but you shouldn't slaughter it. Why? Because it is kosher, but there's another problem here. There's a pain to the giraffe. So don't eat it. It's an interesting idea. Okay, so this is what makes an animal kosher, that is those 2 sides. And then the Torah says some of them have only one sign. 4 animals. Until today, by the way, there was no other animals who were found. They have only one and not the other. And there is no relation between those two signs. There are two signs which have absolutely no relation. It's just the hoof, the chew its cud. It's not related by its nature. But for some reason, there's not too many exceptions to the rules. And the one that is the most famous one is the one in text number 4. Where are we? It's you now?
Okay.
Yes.
And the pig, which has a split hoof, but does not chew its cud, is unclean to you. You shall not eat their flesh.
Okay. So, in fact, most of the animals don't have anything. A donkey, a horse, they don't have any of those signs. A dog. The one who does have one sign, one of them, is a pig. Okay. And the Torah but says clearly, don't think that one of them is enough, you need to have both. Here, the pig, no good. Why? Because it has a split hoof, but it doesn't chew its cud. Now, if this is the case, comes a very simple question. Why in Judaism Chazer is so treif? More than anything else. Well, Chazer, yes, we shouldn't, but it's a half kosher. You shouldn't, there's no such thing as half kosher. But what I want to say is just, why is that symbolizes more of a treif than a donkey or a horse or anything else? I'm saying it's not. It's actually one. Torah says this is not enough. That's the way you can understand it. But why is Chazer, and people know, represents? It's the most unkosher thing. I'm saying, if you know that the language and the culture and Yiddish and this, Chazer is just the worst thing to say about anything and anyone. Okay? It's like the worst thing. Why is it such a terrible thing?
Because it says specifically.
It says specifically. You're right. And there's probably a very good reason to say that this is the main reason, because the Torah says, but then there's something in the Talmud which makes it maybe even more understandable. This is text number 5.
When the pig lies down, it extends its hooves, as if to say, see, I am kosher.
So here we are going into the idea is like this. The reason why the Torah doesn't want us to eat certain animals, and we're going to get to it a little bit more also later, but just in one word, is because there's some character of the animal that we don't want to get. We don't want to adapt. You know, who said, you are what you eat? So we take it very little. You are what you eat. There's some characters that could tempt you from energy of this animals that you should. Now, what is so terrible about a chazer? What's terrible about a chazer is he's not kosher, but he tries to convince you always that he is. He sits like this and he shows his hoofs. This is a terrible character of someone who wants to cover under nakedness, cover under disadvantages, and they're always trying to, with one nice thing they have, they're trying to cover for themselves and from others. It's a terrible character. So maybe this is why chazer became such a treif word, is representing such a terrible character. But in any case, going back to the idea, there is no, as far as being kosher, even a cow, if it wasn't slaughtered in the laws of slaughtering, and a chicken, it wasn't slaughtered, it's not kosher just as much as a chazer is not kosher. Not kosher. Simple. Obviously, other animals are just as much as a pork. And there is no difference as far as not being kosher. Now, some people, especially lately I mean the last few decades, wanted to start making sense out of this whole kosher business, kosher. And they started to say different medical reasons why you shouldn't be eating pork, or why you shouldn't be eating without salting the meat first. Medical reasons, explanations. And they want to do a good service for Judaism by making sense out of those nonsense laws. good service. And they are writing articles with proofs, they found there, this, and that. And they are trying to make, and even eating meat and dairy, this, I don't know what. They are trying to find this is not healthy for you, trying to make sense of it. Now the question is, do they do good service to Judaism and to Torah when they do that or not? They do good service or not? So I just want to show you one thing very interesting. In Numbers, text number 8 tells us, I'm jumping a little bit, tells us who are the people who keep kosher. I think this is a research in North America or in the United States. Who are the people who keep kosher? Where are we? Babe, please.
Text 8. Christians, Muslims, Jews, and atheists alike are helping fuel a robust market for kosher foods, according to a new report by market research firm Mintel. In a consumer survey of adults who purchase kosher food, Mintel found that the number one reason people buy kosher is for food quality, 62%. The second most common reason people say they purchase kosher food is general healthfulness, 51%, and the third is food safety, 34%. This contrasts sharply to the just 14% of respondents who say they purchase kosher food because they follow kosher religious rules. Another 10% buy kosher because they follow some other religious rules with eating restrictions similar to kosher.
Okay. It's pretty surprising. 40%, maybe it explains why you have 50% of the product, which is a beautiful thing, because it became such a huge market. It's a very big market, talking about 62% who don't do it because of any kosher. In other words, 85% of people don't do it because they follow Jewish law. 85% of people who eat kosher. Now, so first of all, I should say that being that I was supervising a few times hotels for Pesach once and for other occasions in Israel, I can tell you that it's a good thing to have in the kitchen someone who's not part of the staff. It's a very good thing. And I can tell you from experience, and I've seen other kitchens also, but I can tell you this is 100% a very good thing. And definitely, all the ingredients someone else has to see. You know, you can't just put whatever comes to your mind and this and that. So that's the first thing. But the question is, does someone does a good service to Judaism when he says, you know, it's good to eat kosher, you know, be healthy, be stronger, eat less of this, eat less of that. Pork is not good for you. Does he do good service? So, if you convince any Jew from eating any less non-kosher with any argument in the world, it's good. No question about it. You know, I don't care what argument you put. If someone will eat a little bit less non-kosher, it's a beautiful thing. So that's for sure. But the question is, do we do a service to the cause? So let's see over here. Go now back to text number 6. And Maimonides in his book of Jewish Law writes, why should we eat kosher?
Mishpatim are mitzvot whose justifications are revealed, and the practical benefits of their observance are known. For example, the prohibitions against robbery and bloodshed, and the commandment to honor one's father and mother. Chukim are mitzvot whose reasons are not known. As our sages said, God says, I order you to observe my chukim, and you have no license to question them. Talmud Yoma 67a. A person naturally chafes against their observance, and the nations of the world challenge them. Examples of chukim include the prohibitions regarding the flesh of a pig and regarding milk and meat.
Okay, so Maimonides says this is the category of chukim, which means that it's not that there are, you know, if you don't understand it yet, do it without understanding. Maybe one day you understand. You have to do it as chukim. You have to do it as something that I'm doing it not for any reason. Just as much, you don't want someone to say, really, I would steal from anyone anything. But just God said not to, so I wouldn't. No, that's not a good thing. A person should say, it doesn't make sense to take from other. You should know the reasoning. The reasoning are important here. It's not, obviously, you should stop even if you don't know the reasoning, but you should work on understanding the reason why you have to honor your parents. You should do it as a commandment, but you should understand that it makes sense that you should do that. And about other things. The same thing about chukim, you shouldn't do it because of a reason. You should do it because you were told to, not because of any reason. And when you look at it, it's like this. When people say, eat kosher because it's healthy for you, what they are doing is basically, they are telling you that just as much as you shouldn't eat this kind of fats and this kind of oils, and this, just as much you shouldn't eat kosher. And this is not that. Why? Because what we are trying to do by kosher food, we are trying to make you stop thinking about your physical health. Stop thinking just about how you feel. And start thinking about something beyond you. That's the idea of kosher. Now, if you put kosher in that category, you miss the point. You miss the point because then kosher becomes also part of your diet, which is nothing, all about you. It's all, you are in the center of everything again. What's the point? You stayed in the center, even kosher, it's all about you. It's all about serving yourself. Even the mitzvot need to serve you. Even kosher to serve you. That's not what it's about. The idea of kosher is food, stop eating like an animal, which means beyond you. It's not about good for you that you can this. No, it's following something higher than you. There's a creator in the world. There's a purpose in the life. There's a direction. Something beyond you. That's the idea of kosher. If you're eating kosher again because of this health benefits, you missed it. No, I think some of you may have heard that story before. Well, they said a Jewish observant man is walking into a grocery store in Florida, and he sees a mother with a child that was clearly not Jewish. And the child wants to have, you stand in the line in the cashier over there, and there's a chocolate this, a chocolate that, a candy, this and that. And the child is this and that. So, no, it's not kosher. Yes, not kosher. Yes, not kosher. And he wants to say, this chocolate, no, it's not kosher. He was looking at it. It didn't seem like they were keeping the laws of kosher. He was really puzzled by that. So anyways, after this, he couldn't hold himself. He went to this woman and he said, what is the business with this kosher? He said, very simple. I used to bring my children to the store. They would say, I want this. And I would say, no, we're not buying it, we are buying dinner. No, but I really want it. Give it to me, please. And this, and I might come. And they started putting a fuss and this. I didn't know what to do. It was terrible. Tell the shop, and I make it in conditions before he comes to the store. And it comes, and again, I want this. I didn't know what to do. One day, I see a Jewish family, not with one child, 5, 6 children. And they are mounting this, and it says, it's not kosher. And that was the end of the conversation. End of the conversation, there was no fussing, that's it. And I said, what? That's amazing. You can just say it's not kosher, and that's it. So there is many lessons in this story. Number one lesson for parenting is the reason why a child kvetches and put a fuss because he thinks he can change your mind. But if he knows that he's not going to change your mind, he's not going to do that. Simple as that. And if you're going to change your mind once, that's it. Then you become vulnerable. And you do it again and again and again and again on every occasion. It means I didn't cry enough. It means that not the whole story is looking at me, just 5 people. If I'm going to scream, the whole story will be looking. And this is not, then you're going to give it to me. And this is not enough. Because eventually, you're going to do. But if they know that it's not kosher, then they know there's nothing there. You can cry for today tomorrow. It's not kosher. You're not going to get it. Simple. That's the end. So they don't cry. That's parenting lesson. But then there is also a very important lesson. And this is, this child walks into the store and he wants this and that. And tell him he's not kosher. What does this child, from a very young age, what does this child think? Not telling him it's not healthy. I know he's unhealthy. You can tell him he's not healthy about the chocolate. You tell him sometimes. But when you tell him it's not kosher, what do you tell this child? You tell him there's something beyond your pleasures and your enjoyment, this and that. There's something beyond you. There's some set of rules that we follow which is beyond us, beyond what I feel at the moment. That's the beauty of it. Now, if you're going to make, and you're going to say, it's not kosher, and the child will start telling him things like this, explain. Oh, because it's not healthy for you. You messed it all up. Kosher is good. It's not kosher, and God doesn't want you to eat not kosher. Why? He doesn't. Fine. So then I wouldn't. It's not about me. There's a higher authority in the world. There's a higher purpose. There's a higher thing in the world. What this does to a child. So if someone wants to do a service to Judaism and he says, kosher is not healthy, you miss the point. You know, my malady is about something else. He says the same. There's a mitzvah of mezuzah. Yes? And unfortunately lately, and I want to mention it because it came today also, unfortunately lately, it's often that I get people with mezuzahs and they want me to hang the mezuzah and there's a paper inside. And I just told someone, I told them, what's the difference between a paper or a parchment inside the case? It's a difference between gold and something is painted gold. What is the difference? It has nothing. And paper mezuzah is not, you have to put it in this gniza where we put the holy this because it has Hashem's name on it, but it doesn't do what mezuzah does. It has to be a kosher mezuzah from parchment. So I'm just mentioning it just so you know. You can buy sometime in a Jewish center and this, and unfortunately they don't know. They think that it's about the case. The case is nothing. It doesn't have to be in a case. It's a mezuzah. It's the parchment, and this is what you care for. Some person calls me sometimes and saying, "No, I have mezuzahs. This is the paper. You don't have mezuzahs. You have cases. This is not a mezuzah. It's a case. It has no significance whatsoever."
My mother just has the parchment on the door.
No.
In a plastic bag.
What do you think? Well, so if you look in old houses in Tzfat, and even when we went to Russia, they didn't have case. You know what they would do? But they wanted to protect it because it cannot be protected well. So they would make a hole. They would engrave into the
Wood.
and they would into the wood, not into the stone. Into the stone. They would this so they can place the mezuzah there and it stays there. And this is how we would find Jewish houses in Europe. We would look and we would see like a little opening there. In any case, so that's just an important thing to know. But the Rambam says if someone puts mezuzah in his house to protect his house, he writes the most terrible things. Why put a mezuzah to protect you? And people come and they ask, but how can the Rambam say such a thing? It says in different places, the mezuzah protects your house, and we put Shin Dalet Yud on it, those letters which stand for Shomer Daltot Yisrael, Hashem protects the house. So how can my Maimonides say that if someone does it, such a terrible thing? And the answer is very simple. It does it. It may do it, but that's not the reason you should be putting it on. It's another insurance to the house. You missed the point. You miss the point. If you have this, and you have alarm system, and you want to have a mezuzah, and this, you miss the point. The mezuzah has to remind you of something beyond your house. When you walk in the house, you leave the house, you remember there's something beyond you. If the mezuzah is also to serve you, so what's left? What's the point? So it's not that it's not. It may protect your house. Maybe not eat pork is healthy. I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe not. Maybe a little bit. It doesn't matter. That's not why you do it. Okay, so this is understanding the concept of kosher food. Don't try to give it reason. Not because it wouldn't be convincing enough. Because even if it's convincing us, that should never be the reason. Now, and by the way, I didn't find it convincing enough reason. Glatt kosher, you heard that expression before. It's kosher, glatt kosher. Glatt. This is not only kosher, it's Glatt kosher. What is this Glatt kosher? So they have a multiple choice question on page 122. So you can take your pen and try and answer this question. And this is, the Glatt kosher product has constant rabbinical supervision. I guess the emphasis on the constant. And then a food, Orthodox Jewish company, they're all companies, and stricter set of kosher rules, both kosher and organic. Well, none of the above. None of them. They didn't do good convincing answers here. None of them sound very... but it is important to know what Glatt kosher is, because once there was a restaurant opened in Israel, and there was a dairy pizza, and it says that the pizza is Glatt kosher. The question is, could pizza be Glatt kosher? So let's see here. What is the law? This brings us to another law regarding meat, which is also not so famous. And this is, besides the fact that you need to have a kosher animal, besides the fact that it has to be slaughtered in a certain way, there's another thing. The animal must be healthy. Animal must be healthy. This is a commandment from the Torah here, page 12. It's a prohibition. Please, Greg, on page 122, 12a.
You shall be holy people unto me. An animal that was mortally wounded in the field you shall not eat.
Okay. The Torah says clearly you shouldn't eat an animal which is unhealthy. Now, there is all laws in the Code of Jewish Law in Shulchan Aruch, what is considered, what is details. One of those examples, and by the way, you heard the expression, something is treif. Obviously, treif. What is treif? Treif comes from this verse. An animal which is unhealthy, it's called treifa. Look in the, if you can read the Hebrew 12a, Vanshei Kodesh tu basar basadet treifa. Treifa means an unhealthy animal, and this is where this treif concept comes from, unhealthy animal. So it has to be healthy. How do you know if the animal was healthy? So there's tests that they have to do to different parts and organs of the animals after the slaughter. And one very big test is the lungs. Okay? If there are any perforations, there's any holes in the lungs, it's considered an unhealthy animal. And what do? By the way, in the olden times they lose so much money because you can't do anything with it. You use the skin, the this and that, but they cannot eat the meat. Today, they have a system where we go to a non-kosher slaughterhouse immediately. Okay, but in the olden times it was. But in any case, that's the idea. So how do you check that there is no holes? There's a technique. You just like you check where you have your flat tire. You put it in water. You check there's no holes. You check every single animal. Now there's another thing. And this is called sircha, and I saw the word in English here. Adhesion. Okay. Adhesion is you feel something, some tissue that is building up on the lungs. And it seems like the reason for it is because of a hole that is there. Something is wrong there. So this becomes an issue. When they would check it, they would come across this and they wouldn't know this is considered healthy or not. So the Bet Yosef was the one who wrote the book of the Code of Jewish Law 500 years ago in the city of Tzfat. The first book to be printed in the Middle East was the Shulchan Aruch. Code of Jewish Law. And he, in his book, which is until today serving us as a summary for the Talmud and the way that we can really take Jewish law, he writes the following. This is 12b.
In all instances where an animal is rendered does not matter whether the adhesion is fragile and slight like a hair, or thick, sturdy, and wide like a thumb. While some massage the adhesion with their hands and permit the animal for consumption if it can be gently removed. This is not proper.
He says it has to be 100% smooth. Now, what's the word glatt means in Yiddish? David, what does glatt mean in Yiddish?
Strictly kosher.
No, literally.
Exact.
Literally. Smooth. Glatt. Smooth. So this is what glatt means. Bet Yosef, by the way, he was a Sephardi, he didn't speak Yiddish. But nevertheless, this is what glatt is in Yiddish, the Yiddish word. And this Yiddish word means that the lung of the animal was smooth. There was nothing on it. But the reason why that's important to know, because on the code of Jewish law, on the Shulchan Aruch, was written by a Sephardi rabbi, one of the greatest rabbis, Bet Yosef. There is comments from an Ashkenazic big rabbi, the Ramo, who lived in Poland. And he writes the Ashkenazi customs where they differ than what the Bet Yosef writes. And he comments on what we just read, and this is 12c. Please.
Yeah, those who carry the massaging and rubbing of the adhesion, for they maintain that the real adhesion, which would render an animal
Trifa, which is not kosher,
would not be washed even if massaged all day. Therefore, they are lenient with regard to an adhesion that can be rubbed off, saying that is only a rear, the lower class of adhesion. Even though this is a great leniency, those who do so should not be reprimanded. But this is the common practice in our entire region, and there's basis for the practice.
Okay. So he argues, he doesn't say that it's not better to be glatt, but while the Bet Yosef is saying that this is non-kosher at all, because it's not glatt, he says, many people do it, and they have something to base on, and therefore they can continue doing that. So we have an argument, does it have to be glatt? Doesn't have to be glatt. The Bet Yosef says it has to be glatt. There are two opinions. And the Ramo says it doesn't have to be glatt. So the Sephardim always ate only glatt. The Sephardim were following the Bet Yosef. The Jews who came from the Spanish Jews who eventually went to North Africa, they followed the Bet Yosef. Now with the Ramo, we have to also say the Ashkenazi Jews were poor. The Sephardi Jews weren't poor in general, and also but Ashkenazi Jews, many of them didn't have. And being that they didn't have, obviously to tell someone because of that the whole animal has to go, the Ramo wanted to save them, that they can have this meat, because the entire cow is not kosher, not this. The entire cow is not kosher in that case. And therefore, the Ramo says they can base it. Now, when Jewish people come, so the Sephardi Jews always ate only glatt. So when there's a restaurant who serves meat, red meat, not chicken, red meat, then there's a concept of glatt. Glatt kosher is to say, we follow the law according to the Bet Yosef, and we serve only meat that when the lungs were checked, it was smooth 100%. This is what glatt kosher means. So if you have a pizza restaurant that says glatt kosher, it doesn't make sense. Pizza doesn't have to be glatt. Pizza can have some cheese. It doesn't have to be smooth. Yeah, it doesn't apply to dairy rolls, it doesn't apply to candies. It applies to red meat. It's glatt kosher.
Rabbi,
yes.
why do we bother with the OU soft drinks, for instance? Just all kinds of things that you think, like it's just water and carbonate, and so why?
So you'll be surprised. You'll be very surprised. Okay, there's many chemicals which are made with also animal product. You know that? There's a lot to be careful. In fact, you will see that candies and gums and stuff like that is very hard. It's a lot harder to find kosher than any other product. Anything that has a lot of chemicals, you get into a lot of troubles. I'm not the expert, but I'm just going to tell you one example. Once someone told me, he said, what's the sense of 100% maple syrup? Canadian 100% maple syrup. Kosher. 100% maple syrup. So I had once a woman in my house that she had a farm and she would make maple syrup. And they said that in order for the maple not to overboil, they would put fats. What kind of fats? Pork. Obviously, they would put, so the maple syrup doesn't overboil. So, just an example that if you don't know, you cannot assume anything about things. I'm not saying many of the things that don't have an OU on them may be kosher. Water, for example, doesn't need an OU. Okay? They choose to have an OU. I think they have something here. The Fujifilm had also an OU on it once because they heard in Japan or whatever that this sells better in the US if they put a. So they put an OU on it. There's some things that doesn't make sense. Those are very big companies. And they go to OU and they say, this is kosher. It's kosher. Can we put the OU? Yes. They give them $1,000 to put OU. But it doesn't mean that it needs. They want it. They come and they want to have OU because they feel that this, people say, oh, it's kosher water. Water doesn't need. But you have to know. I'm not saying that everything needs to have. You have to know there's lists available in different places. There's an application for your iPhone of the CLC and the OK and this and that. And they tell you what needs a hechsher, what doesn't.
Well,
yes.
Like I asked the question, does butter need a hechsher? Like a couple of years ago.
Yes.
And you sent me to a website that gave me a full explanation. And it used to be that butter, it was fascinating. Because it used to be that butter was made just with cream and salt. But there's been a huge change in production, so they're using byproducts to make butter. And so therefore, because they're using byproducts in butter, it's questionable as to how they were processed previously. So,
no, if you were the people,
types of butter really, like, you wouldn't necessarily want to eat them.
Even without the
even without that.
No, so that's what I said. There is definitely a benefit for that, but you know, it doesn't mean that if they can check the chemicals are kosher, it makes it healthy. There's still, but the idea is that you never know how things have been made unless you would never think 100% maple syrup, never think. You never think. So here you go, and you can talk to people who are in that field, they would tell you surprising things about different foods. I'm not an expert, but I can tell you there's a lot of surprising things in this, which you don't even imagine. I just know, from simple product like honey, for example. So honey, when you warm up the honey, you put it in barrels. The barrels may have been not only made, in many cases have been used for other things. Not necessarily, there's many other examples for it. So in any case, you have to know 100% something doesn't necessarily mean kosher. But I can tell you that if you have 100% juice of any kind, it doesn't have to have that. Okay, besides grape juice. Any juice besides grape juice, there's 100% juice, you know it's kosher. But there's many other things like this. You don't need to have a hechsher, but you'll find that those things anyways have a hechsher because it's so easy for them to get one, so they get it anyways. Okay, the next thing that we have to talk about is something, it's called kosher salt. Kosher salt. Why in the world? Any kosher, any salt in the world doesn't need a hechsher, by the way, also. Any salt is kosher. You don't need to have a hechsher. Every salt you're going to find has a hechsher on it, but you don't need theoretically a hechsher for salt.
Also has a lot of additives, whereas sea salt is actually usually just salt.
But it's possible there's another thing that we have to take in consideration. When you have more local products, when we live in BC, things are more local, going to be less kosher. Which means less kosher, not less kosher, sorry, will be less of a chance to be certified kosher. Because there's a lesser population here, And therefore, they don't go through that bother. But if you get product from others from the east, they will go and find the OU. But it comes here also. Today you see all the sugar product, BCK, and the nuts and this and that. They got all natural also. If we realize what we read before about the percentage of people who keep kosher, even not for this, then it makes sense anywhere in the world.
And BCK has really started doing so much more certification.
Yeah. And you know how that happens.
So much
they don't
faster
even
now.
go. People contact them. People contact them constantly. Today, kosher organization cannot keep up with the requests that they have for kashrut. Because people just hear that it gives them another status, and they want to have it. Yeah. Okay. So kosher birds. So we talk about all those signs that makes an animal kosher. Now, what's with birds? We know we eat chicken. But there's other. You can duck. You can eat. But we can't eat any bird. What makes a bird kosher? So the Torah actually lists a number of birds which are not kosher, and all the rest of them are kosher. Nevertheless, we don't eat any bird. We eat only bird, just what we said before, tradition. We eat only birds that we have tradition. There's been the Jewish people were eating. Now, one of the animals that the Torah says clearly is not kosher is chasidah. Chasidah is some kind of a flamingo. Okay? Flamingo, chasidah? Not maybe the other. How do you call them?
Vultures. Birds that eat. Birds
of prey?
No, it's
a pink bird with long legs.
They call it, what's the exact word in English? Anyways, I don't know, I'll find out exactly, but it's a bird that's in the Torah calls it chasidah. Now, you heard the word chasidah, it sounds good. We said that character of an animal, chasid, in the Torah, we know the name of something in Hebrew, is a definition of what the thing is. Chassid, we know, is someone who does beyond the letter of the law. It comes from the word chesed, kindness and giving. And so what's wrong? Why not eat the chasidah? So there's an interesting thing that Rashi says here, and this is text 15. Why do we eat the chasidah? Chassid, chesed, kindness, sharing. This is a character you want to have. Why don't we eat it? Where are we? Mel?
Why is it called Hasidah? Because it shows kindness to its companions.
Only its companions. Okay? So, Chassid doesn't mean, Chesed doesn't mean that you are taking care of your friends, your circle. No, that's not Chesed. Chesed means you take care of everyone that you see there's a need. Everywhere you see there's a need that you can help. Not about taking care of your circle. And this is why Chasidah, while it has chesed, but it doesn't have the chesed that you want in that. Okay, this is just a comment about this idea. Now, so we want to have only birds that we have a tradition about. Now, there was an interesting thing. When they came to North America, the United States, what's called today United States, and they found the turkey, chicken, and there was a discussion. Do we have tradition that we don't have tradition? Now, what the argument to say that we don't have a tradition? Because it's a certain kind of a chicken. It has all the signs to be kosher, by the way, and I didn't mention it, but the Talmud lists why those animals are not, those birds are not kosher, because it has different things. I'm not going to go into it. This has all the reasons to be kosher, but we didn't have a tradition about it. Most of the rabbis said you can eat it.
You can.
You cannot. You can. There was one rabbi who argued. His name was the Shalom, a very respected rabbi, Horowitz. He also lived in Tzfat. And he passed away in Tveria, next to Tzfat. He's buried there, next to the gravesite of the Rambam. If you ever go to the gravesite of the Rambam, right on the left, Maimon is right on the left, is the gravesite of the Shalom. And by the way, if we talk about him, he has his shul in Tveria. It's not only his shul, it's a shul that is more than probably 1,200 years old. But the Jewish community in Tveria had no money, they sold it to the church. And today there's a church on top of it, and Jewish people are not allowed even in. There was once where they were allowed. Anyways, it's in the center of Tveria. This is the Shul of the Shalom. The Shalom argued at the time, and he said, no, this is not a chicken, you should not be eating it. His opinion wasn't accepted, but his descendants until today don't eat it. I have friends who are his descendants, and they have this because of respect his opinion. You don't eat turkey. So I'm talking about 500 years later. He probably has many, many descendants. I don't know if all of them follow them, but many follow this tradition of not eating turkey because of being the descendants of this rabbi. But this tells you that the birds, if there's no tradition, you don't eat.
Chasidah is a stork.
Stuck?
Stork.
Stork. What is a stork? You tell me.
Delivers the babies.
Huh?
The bird that delivers the babies.
The roof.
Where's
They
the
don't really know. Like, I'm going
No.
through 4 articles here and nobody knows.
Okay, so this is, by the way, the reason that when they translated here, they did not write anything but Hasidah. But just last week, I got a phone call from someone in New York. He told me, do you want to get those books? They have books that they identify all the animals of the Torah, and they have pictures and this and that. So there is definitely different opinions. But we know that this is Hasidah, and Hasidah comes from Chesed, but not the right kind of Chesed. Kindness for the circle. Another creature that the Torah says not to eat is insects. But there's insects that you can eat.
Chocolate covered.
Chocolate covered, exactly. Oh, and what are those? Let's see, text number 16. If you want to please.
Any flying insect that walks on 4 is an abomination for you. Among all the flying insects that walk on 4, you may eat only one that has jointed leg-like extensions above its regular legs, with which it hops on the ground. From this locust category, you may eat the following: the red locust after its species, the yellow locust after its species.
Okay, so if you go to Mexico, I think they serve it as a delicacy in a restaurant. You can order it. It doesn't have to be shecht. It doesn't have to be sold. No. You don't have to be shecht like a fish. There's no shchita that goes only to animals. You can eat it, but don't run. Don't go and eat it yet, because just like Hasidah, we don't know what it is. We don't know what the Torah refers to. We don't have exactly an idea. There's so many kinds in this. There's more. The Yemenites, for thousands of years, as we know, the Yemenites, they left the Jewish people in the destruction of this first temple 2,700 years ago. They went to Yemen. They did not return with the building of the second temple. And they continue eating these grasshoppers of a certain kind which they can identify. They continue eating it. Until today, if you go to the Yemenite house, tell them, please don't serve me grasshoppers. Now, I don't think they eat it regularly as a dish, but there are people who eat it. And this is because they have it. Now you make a face. Now, why is chicken?
But I thought there was one that actually had the markings like a hat.
Exactly. So there is. So this is the Yemenite. They have a sign of a chet. It's the first letter of Chagav, because Chagav is the word the Torah uses. We don't know what Chagav exactly means, and they believe it has this chet of Chagav, and this is how they eat it. And if you know the Yemenites, Chagav, the het, Chagav, and they eat it. And they can continue eating it, but anyone else, this is all rabbis agree that if you are not a Yemenite, you shouldn't be eating it. If you don't, and we don't eat it because we don't have this idea. The Yemenite, they kept it, they can keep to the tradition, but we don't, after so many hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years, that we didn't eat it, we cannot now start searching for it and finding it and identifying it as a kosher one that Torah is talking about. Okay. So we covered this, and now we're going to fish. So,
Can I just go back to the birds just for
yes.
a moment? So, is this in a sense that, because we eat domestic fowl, right? And there's no note here about that, like ducks, chickens, geese, but domesticated, not wild, because it's hard to sneak up on a bird and kill it in a kosher way if it's a wild bird.
What do you mean?
Like, people farm chickens, they farm ducks,
They farm chicken because you eat it. It's the other way around. Because you can eat it, this is why you farm it.
Right. But
So, if you eat something, you start farming it. So people can eat it, no?
No, I'm saying, people don't go out and hunt ducks and bring them back in the kosher. You can't shoot a duck and it's kosher, is what it.
Oh, you can shoot it because we have to slaughter it, yes.
That's
Yeah,
right.
but there's probably other ways of catching it if you really want, without killing it. But yes, probably the way it's been done today, it's all farmed. And I never ate a duck in my life. But it's been eaten, the kosher restaurant is served. Yeah. Okay. So, fish, this is one of those well-known signs. What makes a fish kosher is text number 17. And
among all the creatures that are in the water, you may eat these. Any that has fins and scales, whether it lives in the waters, in the seas, or in the rivers.
so, you need to have fins and scales. Now, the Talmud tells us something. The Talmud says that every fish that has scales has fins. Huh?
Catfish don't have scales.
Every fish that has scales has fins, not the other way around. Not everything that has fins has scales. Everything that has scales has fins. It's a certain kind of scale. Scale is also not a literal translation, kaskasim, but it's a certain kind of scale. But it says every fish that has. Since then, by the way, there was never found a fish. There's no reason why, because you have scales, you have fins. There's fish who don't have, I don't know the English names of all of them, or even some of them, but there's no reason why it should come together. But the Talmud is telling you that's a fact, that's the way it is. And it's pretty amazing, because since then, so many fish have been found. But then the question is asked, if so, why the Torah needs to tell us fins? Leave fins away. Just tell us if it has scales. Because I know that it has scales, it has fins. It's obviously sometimes hard to identify the scales, because some fish, when they go out of the water, a lot of the scales fall off, apparently. And so you have to know. It's not enough just to see and say, oh, it doesn't have or it does have. You have to know. But the question is, why the Torah tells us? So first of all, that's telling you that those signs are not only to identify, but they are in some way the reason why you shouldn't be eating it. So in other words, you should be eating it because it has both. Yes, to identify them, you don't need both. And Talmud tells you right away. But the reason why we eat them is because they have both. So I'm just going to take you quickly through a mystical concept of scales and fins, then we'll continue. What is the meaning of scales and fins? What is the idea of them? So scales is, the fish is in the water, the scales isolates the fish in a certain way from the water. 100% carbon, but the scales isolates the fish in a certain way. This is a very important thing. The person needs to be able to have an independent identity and be able to have scales. While you are fishing within the world, you need to be able to have a strong identity and have scales, protect who you are. Now, why do you need fins? Fins, what does a fish do with fins? It changes directions. It helps the fish to change directions. Mel, you are the expert.
That's correct.
Change direction, especially against the flow of the water, but change directions. So scales is isolate yourself, but the fins are, you are still swimming within the water. In other words, we need the lesson of it. And it's a lesson for every Jew and for every human. of what kind of a person we need to have. We don't need to isolate ourselves from the world in a way that we are isolating ourselves, have nothing to do with what's going on around us, and becoming a saint or an angel that's not expected of us. The idea is to be able to isolate yourself, but at the same time be able to be in the water and take your own turns. To be able to be there, but not just follow the flow of the water. Be there in the water, but be able to be yourself. And this is what Jewish people have tried doing also throughout the ages. Maybe eating a lot of kosher fish helped them do that. Now, gefilte fish. What kind of fish is gefilte fish? You go to the store, you say, can I have 3 pound gefilte fish and 2 pound? So gefilte fish is not a kind of a fish. Gefilte fish means in Yiddish field fish, which means like this. And going back to the Ashkenazi Jews who did not have much, and everyone wanted to have fish for Shabbos. A lot of guests around the table, but all they had is a fish. So what would they do? You would take the fish, and they would empty out the meat of the fish from inside. They would mix it with eggs and with flour and with carrots and with this and that, and then they have a bigger fish. So everyone can have a nice slice. That's gefilte fish. Gefilte fish is fish filled with many other things. That's what it is. And by the way, many other of the Ashkenazic dishes came for that reason. The other thing you have to eat on Shabbat, you go, Shalom. You have to eat meat. You have to eat hot food also on Shabbat day. And that's the idea of the Shalom. To make sure you have hot food, has to be something that you can't cook on Shabbat, so it stays from fire. But why do that is meat. Meat, because it was, obviously, if someone is vegetarian, someone doesn't enjoy meat, but because this is a food, that they were keeping for special occasions. Shabbat is a special occasion. But, again, you have not enough meat. So what do? Take the meat, you make a mixture of some kind, and what do you call it? Kugel. Okay? You wonder once why kugel can be made out of potatoes and out of lakshan, out of zucchini. What is kugel? Is this? Is that? Kugel, originally, it was meat mixed with different things in order that everyone should have a piece of meat in the kugel. Today, vegetarian kugel, this kugel, that kugel, kugel really doesn't have meat. I don't see kugel with meat, but originally, it was in order to divide the meat between the family. So this is similar to the idea of gefilte fish. So, we know now which of the animals and the creatures in the universe are allowed for us to eat. But then, there's something we're also very familiar with, and this is mixing meat and milk. After you got all the kosher food, McDonald's in Israel, every certain, there's kosher McDonald's in Israel, but there's also a non-kosher McDonald's in Israel. Now, what's special about this non-kosher McDonald's in Israel? That every certain product that comes into the store is kosher certified. The meat, the cheese, because in Israel it's almost hard to find a non-kosher meat or a non-kosher, but eventually, unfortunately, they treif it all right there. So after you have all those kosher products, you still not necessarily keep kosher if you don't know this concept of meat and milk. That's really the only thing, after all the products came into your home are kosher, that's the only thing you have to be careful on top of that. And this is meat and milk. So, meat and milk is pretty, I'm not going to go, by the way, what we were talking about is just a few facts. This discussion of each one of those areas is the most complicated learning in advanced studies because before you become a rabbi. You go to the yeshiva and you study the Talmud and you study this and you study the Talmudic chapters which are talking about also the laws of kosher. You finished it, this, now you want to get your rabbinical ordination. What you're going to do, you have to study mostly what is the laws of kashrut, of kosher, which is very, very complicated because when you say don't eat meat in a week, you know that's the question of dishes and what is, and there's a whole length of what is considered mixing them together and so forth. But where does it say in the Torah the concept of meat and milk? here, this is verse number 18.
You shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk.
Okay, so some people wanted to say, this is maybe being humane to this kid, and not. So if someone doesn't have an oral tradition, oral Torah, you could think maybe it's talking about the mother, but this is not what we are talking about. We're talking about meat and milk. The Torah says, do not cook them. You see anything about not eating them? Maybe someone else should cook. Go to McDonald's. I'm not cooking it. I just eat it. Yeah. So no. Well, it says 3 times in the Torah. One in the context of cooking, one in the context of eating, one in the context of deriving any pleasure. Which means that if you don't eat pepperoni pizza, but you like the smell of it, and you want to, I don't know who would like the smell of it. So don't go but yeah, a Jew is not allowed to have pleasure and benefit also from meat and milk together. Now, something interesting about this is many people know that on Shavuot is a holiday where we eat dairy. Ice cream party. You know, we have blinches and this and that. Why do we eat dairy on Shavuot? Why do we eat dairy on Shavuot? Every holiday we know, and we just mentioned the idea of eating meat is actually, Anna, why is this?
Because that's when we're given the oral Torah.
Yes.
And that's when we would have learned the laws of slaughtering and all of the laws of meat and milk.
Here you go.
And so at the beginning of Shavuot, we would have had to take the time to do that.
And the idea is the Jewish people, the first time they got it, they didn't have time. They had to eat dairy. So Shavuot is related to this not eating meat. First of all, I'm not complaining about this dairy because this gives me a big attraction for Shavuot. You know, you can make an ice cream party and get everyone to come. But why do you eat dairy? Because on Shavuot you make a special emphasis to remember the laws, including the oral laws. Because someone can say, what's the big one? It's not the mother. The cheesecake is not the mother of the chicken. So you tell you. So let's see here something very interesting. And this is, I'm skipping over here, text number 19c. 19c, Michelle, please.
Choices that the first fruits of the land you shall bring to the house of God, your God. You shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk.
This is the full verse that we just read. Now, when was this holiday that they would bring Bikurim, the first fruit? Shavuot. Shavuot is the holiday when you bring Bikurim. We know that there's many traditions of today. There's people walk with their baskets and decorating the shul and this. Because they bring the first fruit to Beit HaMikdash, to the temple in Jerusalem, and then marching from all the fields would happen on Shavuot, which is the beginning of the seasons of the fruits, and they have the first fruits, and you come, so the Torah also makes that connection, because you look at the verse and you say, what is the connection? Any connection? In the same verse, the same continuation? So here you have a source for this minhag of having on Shavuot, this custom on Shavuot, eating dairy, and then making a statement, we're eating dairy, and if we eat meat, we cannot eat dairy for the next 6 hours. If we eat dairy, we're not mixing them together. Okay. Yes?
I enjoy the whiskey on Saturday, yeah?
Yes. You want to know the source of the whiskey?
Yeah, or from the red wine.
What makes it kosher? Why is whiskey kosher?
Yeah. Why not cognac? Why not vodka?
Oh, okay. Vodka is good.
Oh.
Yeah, vodka is actually the more Russian thing, and really I should be drinking vodka because Chabad Lubavitch started in Russia, and my ancestors were all Russian. But what should I do? Whiskey is better after. But the truth is, and I would have vodka. I would be the only one drinking. But the idea is like this: everything, and I'm not going to go into it in detail, just in one word. Everything that has great product in it, no good. So I don't know, brandy, this, that, I'm not even aware of the details. I'm just going to tell you one thing. There's one drink which is called Benedictine. You know Benedictine? It's a liquor. Benedictine liquor. And that one has kosher one and not kosher one.
Oh, there's tons of those. Koshers and non.
Yeah, but how do you know? It doesn't have all those companies, but they don't want to put any simple. You know, they have. How do you know who's the kosher one? Very strange. The one which is made in a minzar, in a monk. How do you call it?
Monastery.
One made in a monastery is the kosher one.
That's the kosher one.
Why is it so? Because it doesn't have any wine in it. So it's an interesting thing. But in any case, many of those whiskeys, and that's the reason why they are kosher, because we know what they are made of. And someone in some companies, someone went through the process. But those companies, they would never want to put any symbol in it. Okay. So after we can have a little drink, we can go and talk about this concept of kosher. We already understood that kosher is not for health benefits, and if you do it for health benefits, you miss the point. But there is also a mystical, spiritual concept in eating in a proper way. And this is related to a verse which you also may be very familiar with. But then maybe there's a deeper understanding we don't always pay attention to. This is text number 22 on page 131. Please, please.
For not by bread alone does man live, but by all that emanates from God's mouth.
Okay. Lo al halechem levado yechye adam. Famous verse. A person cannot live only on bread, but on the life that Hashem, that God gives into this bread. How do you understand this verse? Now explain to me, just very simply. What does it mean? What does this verse mean? Lo al halechem levado. Not on bread alone. People say not on bread alone. Bread with peanut butter. No, not on bread alone. What does it mean not on bread alone? People usually understand the verse to say, don't think that the bread is giving you, Hashem is giving you life. Not the bread. You think it's bread, is Hashem? You should thank Hashem. It's 100% right, but then there's a deeper meaning to it. And it's to say, when you eat the bread, you know you get your life not from the bread. You get the life from the sparks of Hashem that is in the bread. Lo al halechem levado yechye adam. You are not getting your life from the bread, you are getting from the divine spark that is in the food. That's where you are getting your energy. This the Baal Shem Tov explains this verse. And he says like this, everything we take to ourselves, it gives us energy. It gives us life. It gives us life because it has Hashem's energy within it. Every food that we take has the energy of Hashem within it. Now you take this energy from Hashem that is within the bread, or you can go and bring it up and bring it higher and connect it with its source, or you can bring it down and make it further from its source. If you eat something in the proper way, if you eat something with remembering there's a creator, if you eat something with the kosher, then you are connecting the spark of Hashem, this energy with its source. You ate like a human being. But if you took the food and you ate it just because it's food and I need to survive, or worse, you have taken that energy that you took from the food and you used it for a wrong purpose, then you made it further from its source. So what we are doing with eating, we're actually accomplishing a mission, a godly mission. There's different things in the world. They are all objective. They're not bad, they're not good. Not bad, not good. Is the bread good? The bread not? The bread is bad. Cow? It's a cow. You can make it good or bad. Eat it in a proper way. Use this energy in a proper way. You have turned the entire world to a good place. Every energy in the world you turned in, you brought it back to its source. But if you've eaten it like an animal, so you became part of the same thing. What's the point? You're recycling the food. What are we doing? And this is what helps us remember this is a very important thing that we do after you brought only kosher products to your house. And after you have separated between meat and milk, there's another thing that you have to do. And this is text number 23. Back to you, George.
It is forbidden to enjoy anything of this world without reciting a blessing. To enjoy anything of this world without a blessing is like making personal use of things consecrated to heaven. Because it says, the earth and all that is in it belongs to God.
In the Torah it says, Ve'achalta ve'savata u'verachta. When you eat and you are satisfied, you should give a blessing to Hashem. This is the mitzvah, the commandment of grace after meal, the blessing that we do. Where is the source of making a blessing before you eat something? It doesn't say in the Torah, ve'berachta, you should bless and eat. It says you should eat and satisfy and then give the blessing to Hashem. Why do we make the blessing before? Where is it? So there's an interesting Talmudic discussion about it in Masechet Brachot, in the Talmudic tractate of Brachot. And it says like this. The Talmud is quoting the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, this is the blessing you do on this. It's a Jewish law, oral Jewish law, that's the blessing you make on this. And the Talmud asks the question, minalan, which is the Aramaic word, which means, where is this coming from? Give me a source. I never seen a source. Yeah, this is what we do. Obviously, but where is the source? So the Talmud says something that you almost never find it in the Talmud. It says, obviously. What are you taking from someone without recognizing? What is it? What is it? It's not even, I have to tell you. Taking something, you come into someone's home. You just take, grab. It's a way of asking permission from the Creator to use His world. What's in it? Obviously you say a blessing. So what does a blessing do to a person? Makes them remember that there is a Creator. This is what a blessing does. Before you even start eating. So this is why it says here, La'Hashem haaretz u'mloah. The earth, a person needs to remember everything here. Where did it? Why is it yours? When a person remembers that, this helps you have the right intention. This helps you maybe struggle a little bit less with kosher. Because you think to yourself, what do you mean, everything? Should I go to the zoo in Chiang Mai and eat any monkey? I'm saying, what do you give you the rights to eat anything out in the woods? What is it? Yes, if you recognize there's a Creator, you recognize that you have to thank Him before you even start eating, it helps you remember what eating is about. It helps you remember this text number 22. The verse that says, Ki lo ala lechem levado yechia adam. A man doesn't live on bread alone, but he lives on the energy that comes from God through the bread. Have a good night.